Oh, look at that. Boom. We already got a question. Oh yeah, we're live, everybody. Hi, I'm
Oh,
Scott.
hey.
We're talking to each other. I'm Scott Kennedy, producer and director of Shot in the Arm, and we have executive producer, script consultant, and science educator and astrophysicist, and many more things, Neil deGrasse Tyson. And we have scientist and science communicator, and also many more things, Jessica Malati Rivera. You guys want to say hi?
Yes. Hello. Hello, vaccine universe. Yes.
And guys, you should be able to click on the Q&A thing too. Christian G is in here, says, who's got snacks? I'm so ready. Thank you, Christian. All right, Jason Parker's got the first one. Neil, do you regret going on Big Tree's show? Have you interacted with him since? Exchanged Christmas cards? All right, funny guy.
I like that question. First of all, I don't regret these challenges. I mean, this is how, at least there was a conversation. It was a very awkward conversation, but where there is no conversation, there is no progress. There's no chance of progress. People only dig their heels in that much more strenuously. So it was, I had alerted him in advance that my expertise is in how science gets communicated, and I can comment on that in whatever way these circumstances require. And it's not a matter of taking sides there. I think there are many things the CDC could have done better, not just in hindsight. I knew at the time they could have done it better, just as a professional educator. And so I thought the conversation would stay there, but he pivoted it. Pivot's not quite the right word. He took an off ramp and then went deep into a whole series of this quote, this person, that person. And all I could do is say, if you want to have that conversation, you need a medical professional here to, and he said, well, then none of them will show up. That was one of the retorts, if memory serves. So no, I don't regret it. By the way, they were completely polite, completely cordial. And we even talked a little bit about his weight loss. He was like getting in shape at the time. So it was, I was fed, and the food wasn't poisoned.
You're
So
being nice, Neil.
no, I'm reminded, no, just back up. I'm reminded how things used to be, pre-cesspool that is the internet. If you had a disagreement with someone, well, let's talk about it. And they invite you over, they feed you, and you have the conversation. That's kind of how that happened. Although he stacked the deck, I still felt that I'm glad I did it. But thank you for even asking. That meant you've seen it. And and now, as we know, Del Bigtree was lifted up into the RFK administration with some tasks related to
He's
media,
the head of communications. Yeah.
head of communications. Yeah. Yeah. So like minds are resonant, and so that's where he landed. But yeah, thank you for that question.
Yeah, I think you handled yourself very, very well. I've got a list of counter things for Dell, and yes, he baited and switched on you pretty clearly. You did the best you could, and he did what he wanted to do, which was try and find a few gotcha moments to put on the internet. But you're way above that. Mike Miller, I'd show. It's a little tough on the wording. I'd show to talk with Big Tree or Robert Kennedy Jr. about the science for an in-depth conversation. Oh, I'd do a show with, yeah, Mike. It looks like you say you're an MD. If you want to follow up with that, I'm a little confused, but you're saying you'd like to see a conversation about the science between Big Tree and Robert Kennedy Jr. Sadly, in my experience, they cherry pick the science, or completely ignore the science, but I'll look for a follow-up on
Yeah,
that.
by the way, just again, speaking as an educator, as a science educator, one of the failures of science education in kindergarten through 12, but possibly even through college, is that people are not taught what science is and how and why it works. And it's the idea, well, there's a bunch of facts and maybe they'll change one day. I don't know, but I don't like some of them. I don't believe in some of them. And people have this false sense that they can cherry pick whatever fits their narrative. and whatever is driving that narrative. It could be cultural, political, religious, doesn't matter. The narrative would be some worldview where conflicting worldviews don't resonate. And so they have to edit. And so my sense is that if we had been trained differently throughout our schooling, then we wouldn't be susceptible to this kind of conduct. And the world would be much less full of conflict, the conflict that it has over these matters.
Jessica, you want to, I can see you could go for 2 hours on that same subject. Do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the internet has helped a lot of these types of conversations. But I also think on the flip side of that, you know, it's dangerous, I think, to allow what people are calling healthy debate to exist without, am I echoing? I hear myself echoing, I'm not sure
Bit of
why.
breakup on okay,
Oh, I hear a lot
that
of feedback.
sounded better. Go ahead.
Okay. I think it's dangerous when people ask for a healthy debate or to have people just, you know,
Right.
I think it's dangerous when people, I don't know what's going on with my sound.
Yep, it's on weird on my doing. Try and see what I can do. Neil, how's yours?
Scott, you have sound in the background. I went mute. So that I couldn't have, you have sound in the background. I went mute. So that I couldn't have, oh, yeah.
Yep, I'm back. I can hear you, Neil. Jessica,
Oh, yeah.
yours?
It's just there's feedback from both of us. It's just there's feedback from both of us.
Oh, I'm not getting feedback. Sorry.
Jessica, try again right now.
Okay, hopefully I won't repeat myself. But I think it's dangerous when folks today ask for a healthy debate between two different sides of, say, the science topics of vaccines, for instance, and I think that it can create this false equivalence. And while we can be cordial and polite and exchange, you know, emails perhaps, I think when people are asking to do it in the public forum, especially on the internet, it really is because it's their version of a wrestling match. They want to see who has the bigger digs, who has the bigger punches. I think that really harms a lot of public trust in science when you accept invitations like this, or when you agree to, you know, go on a program or to do an interview with somebody who is intending to do a bait and switch, or is intending to have a gotcha moment, and does not have truth or the process of seeking truth as a shared goal.
So that accounts for why he was unsuccessful trying to get other medical professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's and guys, I think if we, each of us go on and off of muting, we won't have the echo. So let's say we're succeeding at that. Yeah, another version of that request to debate was Joe Rogan asking Robert Kennedy Jr., asking Peter Hotez to come on and debate Robert Kennedy Jr. My question to Joe Rogan is would you do that with, I don't even know what professional referee he would use, but I wanted to try and figure out a way to compare that to, he's a mixed martial arts person, and he's not gonna, if somebody challenged him to a fight, he wouldn't say, I'm gonna meet you on a street corner and let's see what happens. It's like, let's do it in the ring with a referee, with these rules. And I would ask people that are asking to do those debates to at least do it with some form of rules to follow. If it isn't, you know, there's solid ones out there, not perfect ones, but there's solid ones out there.
I just don't debate. I just don't debate people. Got mute. Got
Yep.
Mute. I just don't debate people because it presumes that the winner of the debate is whoever it. Often, the winner of the debate is whoever is charismatic, whoever is more likable, whoever is has the turn of phrase that excites people. And in science, that's just not how we do it. You have the data, and the data speaks, not the personality of the person who's thusly engaged.
Well, absolutely, Neil. It's sadly in this world that people will take that and say, oh, see, look at these scared. So we can't go into all of it. Jason's got a follow-up. Touching RFK's campaign, are you concerned with vaccine policies that might be affected if he does get in office? Or do you think he'll suddenly go, quote unquote, mainstream? You see Jessica nodding, yes, I will mute.
I mean, I think it would be extraordinarily dangerous if RFK Jr. is elected into this extremely high office in the United States, because he's already indicated what his positions will be on a number of things related to science. And he's chosen a vice president candidate who, up until a couple days ago, is just repeating just blatant misinformation about not just vaccines, but even our regulatory process and the systems that we have to ensure their safety and efficacy, which is really, really frightening to see. I don't think the issue is whether or not it'll go mainstream. I think that folks who believe in the kind of things that he believes will continue. They will have that kind of quorum. I don't think it's going to change overall kind of trust in vaccines. I think it's going to create a giant mess of bureaucracy when it comes to states that might choose to reconsider pediatric vaccine schedules, which we're starting to see in some places in the Southeast. We might see decisions to put people like Joseph Ladapo, the Surgeon General of Florida, into higher positions, or people like him in positions in other parts of the government, like the CDC or the NIH. So that's where the kind of like effect can have multiplied consequences. I don't worry about his opinions becoming popularized. I think his damage will just become more prolific.
Yeah, I would add that he's an example in many cases of cherry picking science. So he will say, listen to the scientists on the climate change. He will say that. And then he says, don't listen to the scientists on vaccines. So there's some cherry picking here and an inconsistency related to it. I was going to write something. I haven't gotten around to it, and maybe I'll have time in the coming months. I wanted to write a piece called In Defense of Mainstream, all right? Because there's nothing more delectable than a YouTube moment where someone says, click on here and watch my YouTube. The mainstream wants you to think this, but I'm looking out for your interest, and here's the truth. Oh my gosh, that's clickbait right there. And that has been repeated often enough in social media, and especially from what I've seen, YouTube videos, that the idea of something being mainstream at all is now, it's common to throw that into question. And without people realizing that mainstream is how science works. Okay, you perform an experiment, a test, a trial, and you want to verify that. And when it gets verified and verified again, and ideally again, then it reaches this consensus of experiment, not a consensus of opinion, consensus of experiments and observations. And there's no one person behind that. There's no one charismatic YouTuber. It's just the establishment doing what science does. And this seems to be lost in the modern landscape of social media.
I've got one more challenge for Robert Kennedy Jr. He inspired me in a phrase that he's not just corrupt, he's corrosive to the mainstream that you're talking about. And one of the challenges I have for him is he takes a very large and blunt instrument dissing of Big Pharma. All Big Pharma is bad. Don't trust Big Pharma, until he wants to say, nuance within that. So my challenge to him is release your medicine cabinet. Let us see your medicine. Let's see your history of what you have purchased, including getting juiced up so that you can look all crazy buff, which does not look terribly healthy. So I would like to see that from him. But moving on to the questions, because I talk enough. Oh, Kevin Folta, how are you, Kevin? Nice to see you in here. Kevin Folta, please remind me of the name of your podcast when you get a second, Kevin. Kevin said, one of the surprises of the film is how well RFK's anti-vax stance is, how strong it is. Kevin, maybe you want to add nuance to that. And he's asking me to generate short versions of this that we can share widely. A great film. Thank you very much. And yes, we do have that on our socials. We have the Samoa clip in its entirety and in pieces on all of my social media, so you can find that there. And we have
But Scott, there's many more than just the Samoa scene that I think are very excerptable. Has anyone considered breaking the 90-minute film into 7 or 8 segments, which would then be have a certain accessibility when someone's on the go, or with the attention span that we all fall under in modern times.
Sorry, I should have made that clear. We have a lot more than just Samoa on social media. We're going to keep adding others, and still to come will be our education curriculum, which will have that broken up into a lot of pieces. So I would think within the next several months we'll have most of the movie on in different pieces across the internet. Lenny Duong, forgive me for pronunciation, is a pharmacist. In addition to science and patient education, what other tools can healthcare providers use to help in conversations with vaccine hesitant patients or family? Why are there educated folks who are vaccine hesitant? Oh, that's a wonderful question. I'll go short and quick and hand it to I think to both of you, but I know Jessica is professional at this. The why is very, very difficult. Some of the why is talking about people who are very clever communicators like Robert Kennedy Jr. and Del Bigtree and Andrew Wakefield and others who have scared people with misinformation into choosing to not vaccinate their children. How to do it? I have 2 of my science communication educators on the panel with me, and I've been trying to learn from them for a long time. Connection and patience is key. Don't start with the data. Don't start with saying what they're wrong about. Try to connect. What are we talking about? What are you concerned about for yourself, for your children? What world do you want to live in? What things do you trust? It's always really nice to get some people to say what they do trust. Jessica, do you want to add on to that?
Happily. I think, when we look at the data on trusted messengers, if you look at the Edelman Trust Barometer that comes out every year, no matter what, the primary care provider, a patient's doctor, is almost always going to be a highly considered trusted messenger for a patient. And it's not only just general doctors, it's, their nurses that they see regularly, it's their pharmacists they see regularly. People who know their health and who they have a relationship are considered the most trusted messengers. Now, it's not always easy, and we are living in many uncertain times with emerging threats that sometimes are novel, like H5N1 right now and COVID-19. And it can be difficult to navigate both the emotional landscape and the evidence landscape and try to make yourself be understood to your audience. I can share in the chat a couple resources that I help contribute to. One of them is called the Public Health Communications Collaborative. It is intended to be a hub of communications resources for public health practitioners. That includes everybody who is a clinician, provider, to people who are working in public health departments, in academic levels, and in clinical settings, as well as a playbook that I helped work on with Johns Hopkins on how to navigate mis and disinformation. Not that everything is a mis and disinformation issue. Sometimes it is an infodemiology kind of issue, a too much information issue, where folks are looking for almost like a map quest on how to navigate the information landscape, and that can be very overwhelming for folks. So I'll drop both those links in the chat as to places that you can seek support for this type of work.
And Jessica, I would say there's a psychological dimension here as well. Dovetailing on what I said earlier, someone who speaks with passion in a video telling you that everyone else is wrong and they're looking after your best interest. How does someone resist that, just psychologically? Is there, what do you recommend people do when that's what they see?
Yeah, so this came up today in a conversation at work about what are ways in which you can help navigate the uncertainty, especially when emotions are high. And it's not trying to outdata them. It's not trying to say, I'm going to throw all these really impressive statistics at you, and I'm going to name a bunch of scientists who everybody knows are super trustworthy, and because they believe it, then you should believe it. So much of it is about holding space for the uncertainty. I know that kind of sounds a little woo and new age, but to listen to people's doubts and fears can do a lot in helping understand what will work to help convince a person that what they've read may actually be from an untrustworthy source, and where we can help them find a better source. Or hearing their real trauma that might cause them to hesitate to talk to their provider. We have to recognize that hesitancy and fear is a spectrum, that the people who have questions and doubts are certainly not a monolith, and to treat them as such would be really, really emotionally unintelligent, and also not really helpful for the sake of science as well.
Thank you.
I
Mhm.
wish Americans would just wake up every morning and listen to those last 2 minutes from Jessica. That's that's lovely, Jessica. Thank you. Sorry, going back, I will try and increase my volume, Marcy, in a minute. I'll just project. I will use my theater voice, try and project. Forgive me if my volume is down a little bit. Going back to Sarah Lou. What do you recommend as actions each of us can take to help combat the challenges caused by the lack of scientific literacy and anti-science aggression? Neil, I will throw that one to you. You've gotten into.
Yeah, there's this anti-science aggression. There's anti-science, and then there are people who are like avidly anti-science. And what I do, I don't have a silver bullet there, but I say I've done this, and it does get a rise out of people. I'll say, do you realize we had a space probe that was launched from Earth, a moving platform, and it intersected asteroid Bennu, a moving target. It did a touch and go on that moving target, collected samples, put it into a canister, continued on back to Earth, deployed the canister such that the canister would land in the Utah Test Range desert to be collected by scientists for study, and the craft kept going to intersect yet another satellite, yet another asteroid. And yes, it's science. This is what science does. This is the precision with which it operates. This is, I say people align themselves to get into the eclipse path, all right? The exact eclipse path, knowing to the second when the sun would disappear. No one is saying, well, I don't trust scientists. I don't know. You don't get that on so many other things. No one picks up their smartphone and says, well, I don't trust science, so therefore I don't know what it's going to do. No, you know exactly what it's going to do. And science is behind that, and engineering and technology. So the generalists who say they don't trust science, I just try to bring out these things that are forces in their lives that are keeping them alive, some of them, and others are enriching their lives. And that brings that puts a little crack in the wall. I don't know that it dismantles the wall, but it'll get them to think what scientists are, that we're not just some monolith that runs off and we gather together and say, well, let's lie differently today than we did yesterday. It's like, it's not politics. It's not, we're not making stuff up like so many other branches of life where people then join the tribe and that belief system becomes their identity. That's not how it works. I try, but I can't speak to quantitatively how well I have succeeded in doing so.
Because it isn't just a challenge of trust. It isn't just a challenge of what information you're going to listen to. Are you going to believe in the best science that's available? It's also decency. It's also, we're living through a time that decency is not cherished in a way that it was in the past. If you look at the lines between blue and red, I've had many friends who were much more conservative than me over my lifetime, and we would have great conversations. Going to the top of the conversation, Neil, you're saying having conversations with somebody you disagree with, and then going and having a beer. We would do that all the time, and we loved our families, and we loved the communities we lived in, and I just hope we can get back to that, and if anybody wants to give me some tips on how we increase decency, I would be grateful.
Oh, I think some of it also too comes from the way that even scientists, unfortunately, have turned the belief in science into a red and blue and black and white and a very binary type of thinking. And so these statements like, do you believe in science or do you not believe in science, become truly meaningless. I mean, I had somebody the other day ask me, do you believe in homeopathy? And I said, I believe it exists. Of course, I know that it exists. Do I think it is the better version of care? No, but I think it can be considered in the spectrum of every person is different, and allopathic care is really important. I think this kind of idea of like, it's all or nothing, 0 or 100, is where a lot of even scientists and science communicators can get trapped in the like, it's yes or no, up or down, left or right. And that kind of thinking is not actually helpful for folks who really need to see that science is iterative. Science has a ton of gray, and the gray is where we learn. And to lean into that is a good thing.
Sorry, slow on my mute. Well said. Kevin Foltz, to remind everybody, Kevin Foltz's podcast is Talking Biotech. It's been around for 9 years. So please check it out. Rebecca L. Oh, she's got a long one. Let me see if I can get through this. The Chevron deference was from a SCOTUS case in 1984. Uh-oh, this looks like an SAT question. The Chevron deference was from a SCOTUS case in 1984 and provided for courts to defer to expert agencies, such as FDA, for ambiguous statutes. The deference may end or be severely curtailed in the near future, according to news sources. Have you heard any discussion from vaccines experts such as Dr. Offit or Dr. Hotez on workarounds to avoid impacting public health? I do not know that one. Jessica, you know that one?
This is a legal question that is not in my expertise. I've heard of this, and it has to do with the ways in which things can be interpreted and the reasonableness of an interpretation. But I have not heard a discussion on workarounds from either Dr. Offit or Dr. Hotez on how this is applied to impact public health. I can't answer that question.
And just a point, in 1863, when he clearly had other priorities and issues to think about, Abraham Lincoln brought into existence the National Academy of Sciences, which was conceived to be to have a membership of independent, highly regarded scientists who would give the best available advice to the branches of the government so that they can make the best decisions they can in the interest of the nation. And so what I'm saying is these agencies, I don't know the full beginnings of the FDA or the CDC, but I know that as a mission statement, the goal is to serve the public. And the goal is not to align politically. The goal is to serve the public. And if the politics happens to want to pick and choose, that's not the fault of the agencies. That the agencies are just trying to give information so that our leaders can be informed when they make the decisions that I can. So this is just a shout out for the National Academy of Sciences. It's not just another agency that somebody just thought up overnight. It is a time-honored institution in the United States for just that purpose.
I'll also add to this and say that when it comes to the public health space, and this goes way back to early American history too, the Constitution is why public health is a state issue primarily. Federalism is why each state is responsible for their own public health, and the 10th Amendment is part of that too. And the decentralization of public health is an impediment in a very kind of globalized world where we should be more connected. But entities like the CDC don't actually have enforceable power, in part because of federalism. They can't really compel states to do anything. They can provide guidance, they can provide recommendations, and that's what they do. That's why state policies on vaccination are different. That's why state policies throughout COVID were different. Do I think it can get worse if a more radical, president comes into office? Certainly. But I think we already have like a baseline decentralization of public health that makes it a challenge.
Yes, all they can do is recommend by example and hope or anticipate that states would adopt whatever their recommendations are. But after that, right, they've got no power.
I hope I'm using the technology correctly. And I copied in Dorit Reese's Twitter, Doritmi from Twitter. And she's a lawyer, excuse me, and will answer any questions that you have. Moving on, Jason Parker.
And it's called X, not Twitter, just if you want to be up on
the. I don't have the respect to call it out. Jason Parker followed up with, are Offit and Hotez as approachable and chill as they seem in the film? Do they seem like they have become more guarded since they became such targets of the anti-vax movements after COVID? They are absolutely that chill and that funny. I'm so glad I got to have a couple of moments of Paul Offit's amazing sense of humor. Peter also has a wonderful sense of humor, as many scientists do. So yes, they're approachable on social media, but yes, they have. Peter has had security at several recent events where I was in attendance with them. Sadly, Paul, I don't think travels with security, but he's had, as he says in the film, he's had threats against his life as well. It's very, very frustrating. Let me see. Kevin Folta following up. Your points are well taken. I sat through 2 excellent talks on nutrition this week. Panels that said we just need to educate. Unfortunately, can't educate ourselves out of this. It's a communication problem based on values. Scientists don't understand this, and it fuels the problem. Jessica is on the right track here. Well said, Kevin. I couldn't agree more. Jessica, you had some questions, but when we were in the waiting room of things that we wanted to get to tonight. Do you want me to remind you a couple of those, or do you have them right in front of you?
Remind me.
I'll get you. I got them right here. You said, nope, now we're slow internet. Fear-based messaging, we touched on a little bit. Responsibility of being a public figure and a politician.
Right. I mean, we kind of touched on this earlier. Mute, please.
Nope.
But influence is a very, very powerful force, and people's public platform is a very powerful source. And we're now seeing because of politics right now, a group of, and Scott and I, we talked about this on the side, a very, very reasonable response to not loving the 2 other options and trying to go to a third party. A third party desire right now makes a lot of sense, but you're also seeing somebody being very opportunistic about it. And when you have that terrible combination of folks who feel kind of politically orphaned and then get sent to a third party alternative that is really dangerous, you get yourself into the situation of, wow, where is the responsibility, the ethics behind telling folks that you are an alternative to the politicians that have been kind of presented as option A and option B. And I don't have a perfectly clean answer to this, just that knowing that moving to third party in this situation, actually for the sake of science, would be extraordinarily detrimental for the country. And it's scary to think that among all the crises that are going on, that this would be an opportunity to take folks who might have voted otherwise in different ways in that direction. I'm trying to be very careful with my words.
You did well. Yes, we're getting into the politics of it. I can see absolutely why somebody would be skeptical of the 2 main choices that we have. I can see frustrations with those 2 main choices. The part that there's just no distinguishing between the certifiable danger that is Donald Trump wants to do to our democracy. He says it. I'm not making these words up. And I understand that there are some people out there that want to burn it down and start over. That makes me very, very sad and scared. And I hope that's not what we get to. Can we stick it out for even 4 more years with Biden and then get a better Republican candidate and continue this conversation, or a better third party candidate? I love it when a third party candidate is bringing in ideas, you know, that somebody from the mainstream isn't talking about. Fantastic. Sadly, that is not Robert Kennedy Jr. And I know, sadly, everybody's going to just tear away from here. Jessica's going to have to leave a little bit early. Do you have about 5-6 more minutes, Jessica?
Got 7 more minutes. 7 more minutes.
7 more minutes. Excellent. Neil, do you have a question for Jessica? Or Jessica?
Yeah, I think it's rare these days that anyone you vote for has every element of a policy that aligns with one's own wishes or desires. So if it's not literally the least of the evils that one is voting for, you're at least just trying to match as much of a package as you can. And as we know, RFK, he has a record for fighting for people. And so this vaccine platform resonates with that mindset and that urge. And so there may be people who vote for him who might be pro-vax, all right? But like everything else that he is, that the other 2 candidates aren't. So for me, in a elective democracy, the republic that we live in, what people vote for, I never tell people what to vote for. I just inform them so that whatever decision they make is as rationally based as possible. And so that's why you never see me bad-mouthing politicians ever. I'm an educator speaking to the public about all the ways science can improve their health, their wealth, their security, and the like. So that's just my reflections on this. Yeah.
Do you see a significant difference are you scared of Donald Trump becoming president?
I think whatever are his stated threats to what a mainstream thinking would call democracy, I wonder whether he could even be successful doing it. We have the January 6th example where, no, it failed, right? It failed because the democracy was bigger than the threat, all right? The laws that are in place were bigger. When I served the Pentagon, and I had many walks through this huge building, throughout the rings, there along the walls, there are these phrases, sayings, most from the Constitution, others from other founding fathers. And at every turn, it speaks of establishing your allegiance to the Constitution, not to the commander-in-chief. That's an interesting fact. In fact, the commander-in-chief isn't mentioned anywhere that I saw on any wall. So in terms of people who are serving the government, especially in positions of military power, where generally if you lose a democracy, it's in consort with a military force, I don't see that happening. And maybe I'm naive because we've seen democracies fall in the past, but I think we're pretty strong. And so I fear it less than other people do, in spite of whatever have been the pre-election declarations.
I would never call you naive, sir, but it is scary. So we will see. Anonymous attendee has a piece to draft off what you were saying, though. It is a false debate between the quote 2 main candidate sources. It is all about who is on their teams. Joe Biden has staffed his team with capable, well-qualified people. The other candidate, no name, has a cohort of liars, convicted felons, and soon-to-be convicted felons. Quote, you are known by the company you keep, end quote. Well said. I've got another one in here from...
Yeah, just a quick reaction to that. So I will never require that a head of state be completely scientifically literate. Be good if they were, but if they're not, the least I would require is that they have trusted scientific advisors that they listen to, all right? And then they have experts in all the ways you need it to feed decisions that the head of state makes. And in part, that's what the cabinet is for, but other panels of advisors and other agencies that serve the government. So yes, a scientifically literate president would be great. It would cut through a lot of challenges the country has faced, but I don't expect that anytime soon. And we just need a good listener, because in the end of the day, are they our leader or are they our follower? Right? I mean, that's not a resolved question.
I've not witnessed Donald Trump ever being a listener.
Okay.
He's a talker adder. But we'll move on. Michael Orso, sorry late to the game on screenings. Loved Food Evolution, previous film I did with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and attended the screening in Chicago hosted by the Institute of Food Technologists, IFT, thank you. Illinois Farm Bureau, Illinois Science Council. Will groups be able to host public screenings of Shot in the Arm, and if so, when and how? Absolutely, they're going on all the time, both in person and virtually, and you can get all that at shotinthearmmovie.com. Email me directly too, Scott@Black Films, or ask me on social media. So easy to find, and thank you very much for that, Michael. I've got another one from.
And by the way, often films with this level of potential influence are empowered by that very access that people would have through these screenings that would be distributed across the country. If you look at some other films that had huge backings, that was clearly just propaganda for especially food documentaries. It's like, whoa. And you look at the distribution they have, and how people become fluent in what's in those documentaries. When I tell you what I did once, Scott, Jessica, I had to sign a lot of book plates to go into a book that I was publishing, and I figured out how much time that would take. And I say, I'm not going to do nothing for all those hours but sign. So I decided to watch every single food documentary on Netflix, one right after another. And once I did that, it was like, oh my gosh, the most blatant feature is that none of them agreed with each other. Okay. And so that was surefire evidence that there's this maelstrom out there. And so, but meanwhile, they get heavy distribution. So this is a film, I've said before, I'll say it again, it needs to be seen by all 8 billion residents of the planet.
I'll never cut you off on that sentence, sir. Do you need to do parting words, or?
I'll do a parting word in that it kind of links to this, because I do agree that everybody should see this film, and sometimes access to see it is based on, just the algorithm, because, the algorithm is going to prioritize some content, and publicity dollars is also going to push some content on you. And unfortunately, political content has extended to be even science content, and content about the state of science and anti-science. And that is unfortunate. I've seen a dramatic drop in engagement for my work. I know that Scott's been feeling that too. And so if you're not seeing it on social media, there's a reason for that. It's kind of this deprioritization of content that falls under this very broad reach of politics. And so let's do our best to get this in rooms and classrooms and more virtual screenings, because that's probably going to be the best way that we're going to have impact. We can't rely on the platforms anymore.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for taking the time to join us, and we will talk soon. Have a great night.
Bye.
Yes, my wife has taught high school in Compton, California for 26 years, and one of her students saw a rough cut screening of this, and he says, "Oh, I get it. They're selling the big lie very successfully, and we have to sell the big truth." And it's, as you pointed out earlier, Neil, these clickbait things that are sort of very, very difficult to not click on are cynical, and they're not skeptical. They're that's what makes them clickbait. And I don't know how we're going to reverse that.
Yeah, just to be clear, skepticism is a time-honored and respected path towards the truth. And often people think being a skeptic is just doubting everything. Sure, but you have to also recognize when sufficient data and observations have the power to override your skepticism, and then you recognize this emergence of an objective truth, which is all we ever attempt to arrive at in science. That's what science is. That's what we do. That's all we do.
Okay, Jason, another one. Scott, were you actually attending the MAGA Medical Freedom Rally on January 6th to get that footage? Did it feel like a scary situation? No. Thankfully, one of the pleasures of the antis is they shoot everything. They're wonderfully vain, so they get just shoot tons of stuff for me. I was not there. That was a melange of footage from January 6th from a lot of places. And the only reason January 6th was in the film was because Del Bigtree was there having that freedom rally and spewing disinformation. I've come to call it, if you tell my lie, I'll tell your lie, was a little bit of what that energy was from Del Bigtree at there. And he even said, as you saw in the film, he says, I wish I could tell you that COVID was real, or that you could trust Tony Fauci. I wish I could tell you that voting machines worked. Right. So he just was just bundling it all together and saying, all of your cynicism is founded, and I'm gonna double down with it. He's never said that again. I like him to see him say that now as the head of communications for Robert Kennedy Jr. Sorry, I would like to see him say, I'd like to see him respond to it. But no, it was it's a dangerous thing to, and it's a catch-22 of good science communication versus cynical communication. The cynics kind of do this simple thing of, if you tell my lie, I'll tell your lie. Where on the science side, well, we probably should vet it. We should probably have a meeting about it and those things. And I respect it, but when we're fighting against that much ruthless cynicism, I think we need to accelerate the way we bring communication, like an event like this and a film like this, to the world. All right, I think we're getting to the end of our questions. If I missed anything, please post it a second time. I think we had one about Jenny McCarthy, which is always fun to get to. It seems like, this is from Jason Parker, it seems like Jenny McCarthy wants to pretend her anti-vaccine years never happened. Did you think to reach out to her about those years and her current beliefs when making the film? When we started the film, I would have, even in 2019, I would have thought Jenny McCarthy, if somebody asked me, oh, you're making a film about measles outbreaks and vaccines and anti-vaxxers, is Jenny McCarthy going to be in the film? I thought very, very high probability that she would be in the film. She was one of the OG anti-vaxxers and very successful at communicating. Sorry, Oprah, but you did give her a platform. I'd love you to come back and say, I'm sorry about that, but respect. And then in the editing, she just got outweighed by how terrible Robert Kennedy Jr., Del Bigtree, and Andrew Wakefield and their incredible influence. There would be no Jenny McCarthy if there wasn't Andrew Wakefield's lying study. But I have not reached out to her in a while. If you could share anything with me, I've heard that she's flipped, but I haven't really seen her completely flip and say that she's pro-vaccine. My
understanding is that her child had some sort of symptoms that she blamed on a vaccine that was administered, and it was later revealed to be a different condition that was manifest in the child. I don't have the language for what it was, but this was my understanding. And upon realizing that it could not possibly have been the vaccine, then she backpedaled on those original claims. But in all fairness to her, Scott, she was riding on Andrew Wakefield's results. And so how much can you hit people on the head if they're listening to someone who's a medical doctor, right? And so one thing that's good about the film, that I would say is better about the film than you are occasionally in person, is you are a very sensitive voice. I did not narrate the film, you did. And and you do it very sensitively, without judgment. You're just there. And so I wouldn't hit her on the head for feeling the way she did at the time she did. And the fact that she's not on the front lines making those same declarations, I think is progress. Just let that rest. Not to yank her back out of the woods and say, apologize. No, maybe she'll do that, but to require that of her, I don't see the point.
I agree. No, I agree. Well, two things. I am open to anybody that has the decency and humility to say, I was wrong about something and I've changed my mind. That's one of the greatest things we can do as human beings. So my open arms for that. And absolutely, thank you for the kind compliment. The word empathy was used a great deal in the editing of this film.
I only complimented your performance in the film.
Yeah, get that straight, everybody. Short list of his compliments for him. We have but in all sincerity, the empathy was such an important word to us in the editing process, and separating Jenny McCarthy would have fallen under this as well. Empathy for Jenny McCarthy going through the troubles of her child who had learning disabilities. My nephew is autistic, and my big sister, bless her heart, Lisa Marie Kennedy, I love you, Nikki DiLoretto, my nephew, worked so hard to work with him. Never took any of the bait and cynicism of the anti-vax movement. Told by doctors that he would never drive a car, have a driver's license, or go to college. He has a driver's license. He's about to graduate college. So just huge respect and empathy for the hard work that it takes to make life better for these children with different disabilities, learning disabilities, or other things, and separating that completely from people who are lying to them to say, this is why this happened to you. These are the people who did it to you, and you should go get them. And it's really a shame, and I'm so grateful that we have.
Hence Peter Hotez's book.
That's
Vaccine
it.
did not
And his
cause,
daughter,
but
yeah, his daughter Rachel. We're so
Yeah.
grateful that we have that in the film, because a lot of these people are not just getting it wrong about the connection between vaccines and autism. By bringing this cynicism into it, they're keeping us from doing the good work that can be done with Rachel, my nephew, and on and on. Marcy Shaver, will the documentary be available on any streaming platforms soon? Yes, it will be on PBS in the fall, probably just after the elections in November. And we can talk about that. But it is available for private screenings, and we are going to, we'll announce it now. We're going to announce it tomorrow. We're going to extend this week's screening, excuse me, a week. So that's going to happen as well. So let me see. There might have been another question added. Oh, yes, there's a few more. I have to scroll down. Anonymous attendee, thank you for making this important and very timely film. Do you think one of the things that medical and scientific community needs is better graphics and better marketing? Absolutely, we just said that earlier. For example, even if just simple bar graphs showing the numbers of cases and how many fewer cases of measles, COVID, et cetera, there were after the vaccine. Absolutely. One of the nicest compliments I've had for the film is from Kathleen Hall Jameson. Incredible scientist, incredible communicator, defender of the truth. I have her book right here, Unspun, Finding Facts in a World of Disinformation. Please read it. She said that the film Shot in the Arm succeeds in a way that 20 years of papers hadn't. And that's not to disrespect the papers. The papers are very important and serve a certain purpose, but there's a different thing that we can do as storytellers. And I'm very honored that she's found respect in the film, and the film has reached all of you and others. So,
and in that same vein, I compelled Scott to include one or two plots, graphs, to back up statements that were made that without the graphs is just you're speaking and somebody else is speaking and you don't agree. But the graph takes it out of the individual, it takes it out of the charisma of whoever's delivering the message and puts it in the raw sort of truth of the numbers. And so I was very happy by those additions, Scott, when that went in. That's in my capacity as script advisor and as story advisor. I had nothing to do with the storytelling. That's well outside of my abilities. But I think that's one of the strong points of the film itself.
One of the beautiful things about film is how collaborative it is, right? That I love working with the smartest people. I don't want to work with yes people. I want to work with the smartest people that I can to make the film as sharp. And as your father said, you can't just be right, you have to be effective. And thank you for trying to help me make it a more effective film. Sarah Lou, it feels very easy to feel a lot of despair and hopelessness given the wide reach of mis and disinformation. What are things you see that give you hope that it's not a lost cause? Oh, that's a beautiful question, Sarah. Go ahead, Neil.
I have an answer that may sound semi-comical, but it's as true as it is comical. and I've said this, I think, on Colbert, but let me say it clean and without time constraints here. I foresee that the urge to bring AI into the service of making deep fakes on the internet will become so severe that people who previously believed fake information will think that their fake information is faked and therefore no longer believe it. And so if those people no longer believe the faked information and anyone else already knew to not believe faked information, then the internet will implode upon itself. And you'd see the tombstone, 1992 to 2026, whatever it is, and it will no longer be considered a source of information. It'll still be there, but it'll be a source of like cat videos again, and memes and just fun stuff like what the internet used to be 10 years, 15 years ago. And so in that sense, people might then return to books or to conversations or the like, or perhaps even the evening news, but not the random flow of disinformation and misinformation that is the cesspool we call social media.
Sarah, I will answer your question about what gives me hope with pointing back.
So that gives me hope. That's
okay, we got it. To a scene in the film that it chokes me up every time. The Robert Kennedy Jr. Robert Kennedy Jr. plays a major part in it. The Samoa sequence between 2018 and 2019. And the two families that lost their children to just a mistake, a human error in putting, instead of saline water, and putting a muscle relaxant into the MMR vaccine, and these two babies died. Just horrifying. I'm the father of two children. Neil's the father of two children. Nobody can imagine how horrifying that experience would have been for these families. And these families, at the end of that sequence, when the measles outbreak is going on, could have been so cynical, could have been so angry and wanting to get the institution of that hospital, the nurses, and get back at them in some way. And instead, they saw the tragedy that was happening by not giving the measles vaccine in Samoa. And they said, don't let our tragedy be your tragedy. And they went on the news and they said, please get vaccinated. And that gives me hope. We can be mean as human beings, we can be selfish, and we can also do that. So that absolutely gives me hope. I think we can close out with one question from Lanine. What do you need to get Neil to run for office? Perfect. So appreciate everyone's work on this project and on this topic. Thank you so much. All right, Neil, we're gonna end with that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I was once asked that by the New York Times. There was some impasse in Congress, and they thought, well, maybe we need different kinds of points of view other than the standard ones that are always expressing themselves in the halls of Congress. And so they asked a bunch of people, including artists and people from different walks of life, to comment. What would they do if they were president? How would they resolve the impasse? And in my reply, I had a much bigger reply, but I cut it down. Let me give some of the extra things that I didn't say, but I thought. When you are, more than half of Congress are trained attorneys. And what does a lawyer do? Well, you pay a lawyer to defend your case, and they will defend it like no matter what. So they will take a position that is not flowing from what is objectively true. They're taking a position flowing from what they're supposed to argue, because that's their job. And I hadn't fully appreciated I don't want to call it the randomness of it, but the arbitrariness of it until I learned how debating team works, because my high school had a very good debating team. And I didn't realize that they know the case that has to be argued in the tournament that they're going to, but they do not know in advance which side of the case they have to argue. So they have to be ready to argue both sides of the case. And I'm saying, is there any attempt here at getting an objective truth so that no one has to argue? It's not even a consideration. Now, maybe all legal challenges don't have objective truths waiting to be discovered. I don't know. But Lady Liberty, Lady Justice is there to discuss, to figure out what is true. I'm still disturbed that they've closed their eyes, because like eyes are really good at, they're better than other things. Okay. You use all the sensors you have plus data. Okay. But anyhow, it's not my field, so I shouldn't be judging it in this way. My only point is, if you're a trained arguer and then you're elected to Congress, where you now get to argue with people opposite the aisle from you, that's the arguing scenario on top of your arguing training. And there's no hope of anybody converging unless there's some major threat that threatens everybody, and everybody's got to get together to combat the common enemy. I thought COVID would do that. I thought COVID would be the one enemy, like an alien from space, and we'd all get together and fight it and not use magical thinking and put down all the political divides. But that's not what happened. Very disappointed by that. Getting back to the question, my reply to the New York Times was, if I were president, I wouldn't be president. Because that implies that all you have to do is swap out one leader, put in another, and all will be well. And consider that you could remove Trump, you could have removed Trump from office, let's say, in his last term, but that doesn't get rid of the 80 million people who voted for him. They're still there, right? That doesn't solve that. And as an educator, I care about how people react to information and how they discover objective truths and how they formulate their opinions on an objective truth rather than on air. And so, no, I don't care as much about who's president as I do about the electorate and how educated they are about the opinions that they then formulate. So I said, no, this is a non-starter. I cannot be effective as a highest ranking person in the country. I'm way more effective as an educator.
I think we will leave it there. Mike Miller, sorry, I'm gonna give you one more, Mike, because I didn't get to enough of your questions. By the way, the AAAS Science Policy Fellowship Program has been bringing scientific expertise to Congress and federal agencies for more than 50 years. Thank you for that point.
In fact, my field also, the American Astronomical Society, we have fellows who serve in branches of the government to sort of help advise in scientific issues that come up. And they serve both sides of the aisle, by the way. So it's a way to infuse science advisory capacity into decisions that are made by various members of Congress. So there's some attempt to do that.
So,
yeah.
Thank you, Neil, as always. Thank you, everybody.
I'm reporting from space. Yes.
From space. This is Ireland behind me. That is the Gap of Dunloe in County Kerry, Ireland, Black Valley Films. Thank you all so much for watching the film and coming here and talking with us and asking wonderful questions and talking about decency, and let us go forward and try and get better in this and heal this fragile, beautiful world that we live in.
And Scott, I would say the key word there is decency. That's right. Whatever happened to decency?
It's still there. It's still there. I'll really
Look,
quick.
it's buried in the social media. It has to implode and maybe it'll come back.
I screened the film in Wisconsin. There were 3 gentlemen that were at January 6th, and the Q&A was a little spicy, wasn't rude. But one of them came up to me afterwards. He said, "Can I please shake your hand and thank you for bringing this film all the way to Wisconsin?" I was like, "That's decency. Thank you very much. Of course I'll shake your hand." So to decency, everybody. Have a great evening. More to come. Thank you.
All right, Scott, good to see you.
See you, man. Thank you.